And we're live. Today is December 30th, 2022. 2 more days till 2023. And for people who view this as a replay, this is my traditional question and answers session, where we look at the year that's passing and we talk about stuff for 2023, and people ask questions and I provide answers. And I don't see anybody in the chat room yet. Let me just quickly check my my channel here. Well, it looks like it's working in the it's working in studio on YouTube, but I think I'm supposed to see some comments in here, but I see no comments. Stream analytics, viewer activity, stream health, live. Yes, we're live. Okay, I see some comments here. Yeah, hello guys, but I'm just curious, why is it not allowing me? Oh, okay, cool. I see comments on StreamYard. So basically this time I'm using a piece of software. You can probably see the logo in the top right or left screen. It says powered by StreamYard. And that's a pretty cool piece of software that a lot of YouTubers use. And the best feature is that I can invite people to join me on the live stream. Basically, I have a button here at the bottom that says invite. And when I click that, it gives me a like an address, HTTP address, and I send it to the person, as long as they have like a camera, you know, like a computer with a camera, or maybe even a phone, I think, as long as they can do live stream from their phone. Yeah, hello everybody. So I think we have one question from Bold Mechanic, who's hard at hearing. How are you liking Alberta? I like it. A gentleman here asks me, did you forgo collision coverage on your Hellcat until you'll be driving it? Yeah, I talked to the insurance, to my insurance company. I'm using TD Bank for my car insurance and home insurance here in Canada. And they were very helpful, and the rate actually was no different, even a bit lower than what I was paying for my Charger before. And so I told them, I said, this is the truth. I'm not going to use this car until spring because it has summer tires, and I'm just, you know, trying to get my bearings. Next winter I'll be driving, but this winter I said, just give me storage protection. And I think it was like $44 or something. And so, yeah, so now I'm just paying for storage insurance only. I think it's theft and fire. And David from Ohio says, hi, hello, evening. It's 3 o'clock. Oh yeah, it's already 5:04. You know, that's one thing I keep forgetting about Alberta, is that it's so far west, right? Like when I wake up at 7 o'clock, well, let's say I wake up with a phone call at 6 o'clock, and I'm thinking, who the heck is calling me at 6 in the morning? And then I realized that 6 in the morning, that's already 8 in New York and Ontario, right? And so that's a bit challenging, you know, for the broker, because a lot of customers are on Eastern Eastern time zone. Yeah, that's right. I'm alive. And that's another cool feature here. You see, you don't get this on regular YouTube when you do streaming, but with this, all I have to do is just I have to point at the comment I like or I want to put on the screen, and when I hover my mouse over it, it says show, and if I click show, like in this case, Roger from Alabama is saying hi, so I click show, and it's showing here. Right, that's pretty cool. And then I click hide, the same button. And yeah, Robert says that StreamYard works on smartphones. So yeah, so basically anybody who has a streaming capability on Android or iPhone, if you have something important to say, let me know and I'll send you the link, and that will put you on half of the screen. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but I can split the screen. All right, what other questions we have here? How many loads were able to book so far? Well, maybe the right question is how many loads I missed, but well, honestly, so far I had one load. So it was a power only. A couple of guys from Texas purchased Landau type of a RGN/step deck trailer, and for some reason it was sitting in Washington State, and so they were looking for somebody to, just tow it, right, like power only. And I found a guy, and it was a bit tricky because the logistics company where I work as agent, they have their requirements. First off, I cannot give you a load unless you had your MC like as an independent for at least 90 days. And secondly, they must have a specific tow away insurance. Because I remember when I had trucking insurance, my broker made me delete it, because when you go on the FMCSA website and you do that update about your authority and you tell them what you're going to haul. So I chose machinery, large objects, and then construction materials. And then I thought, hey, maybe sometimes I'll do power only. And I put that in. And then when I was getting insurance, they wanted a copy of that FMCSA carrier profile. So I sent them that, and right away, like they almost all had like a collective heart attack. Oh, no, we don't support that. And so there's a special clause you have to add, and not all truckers, they think they have it, but quite often, like I would say 90% of people don't know that they need something, extra. And so this particular guy, the carrier I found, he didn't have it either. He said, oh yeah, I have it. And then I said, okay, could you please send us proof of insurance? And he sent us, that insurance certificate, and it's not there. And so he had to go to his broker, apply for it, get it. So it's not easy. Like if I was just by myself, a single guy, and I didn't care about lawsuits and stuff like that, I would probably just pick, any guy with a truck. But then, this way you really protect your butt. All right, so yeah, so that was my only load. So there's a couple of loads I've been working on, but one thing I learned is that you got to be skeptical. Now I'm getting into the proper state of mind. Before I was getting really excited when people would ask me for a quote, like a customer, and then you realize that the load is not even ready, or the load is being in I found this forklift, right? The forklift is being worked on. They have no idea when it's going to be finished. And so I have people calling me, and I say, hey, I'm sorry, like that load, the financial paperwork is not ready. Like on one load they're still working on financing for the buyer who bought the machine from Manitoba and is going to Quebec. And then this other machine, a forklift from Ontario to Western Canada, it was supposed to be ready like before Christmas. Like I send them emails, no reply. So they ask you for quotes, but the load is not ready, And so now I look at those requests kind of like, what, just could you please get in touch when you're like 1 week away from, and you know for sure when the load is shipping, because it just, it's a waste of time, right? And then carriers and truckers are calling me, and I cannot give them the load. Okay, do you miss traveling by truck and seeing different areas, or are you preferring to live in a more comfortable life at home? Asks Mark Smith. Well, I say what I don't really miss traveling by truck. I find that it's so much more comfortable traveling by car, and I really look forward to getting my Hellcat out of storage, and then I'll start exploring, because I'm 1 hour away from mountains in BC, where I was a couple of years ago, that Lake Louise. I'm really gonna start exploring this area, and of course I'm gonna go find some racetracks and some gun clubs, or maybe some private property where I can shoot my Mossberg 590M that's arriving on January 4th. And that's a negative on the Indo plant. People are watching from UK. Hello, Mr. Thomas. Do you miss life on the road? Well, especially last week when it was minus 32 Celsius. What is it, like minus 25 F? I really did not miss it, because it's just diesel engines in cold weather. It's awful, And if I was here, I would be worried every morning if my truck would start, if I see white stuff inside the tank. And that's why, the truth of the matter is that here in Alberta, the majority of trucks, once they buy a new truck, they just delete the emission system, which is, of course, is illegal. But because emission systems, that's like they're really a sore point with these modern trucks. And I remember on my Kenworth, that's pretty much, in Mac, that's maybe 90% of all the breakdowns were all emission equipment related. And so tracking in cold weather with a modern truck, with a diesel engine, with emissions equipment, I don't miss that. You can just do USA loads that don't originate in Canada. Well, that's the beauty of being a broker, is that brokers are not as limited as truckers. So, for example, if you're American trucker, you cannot move loads inside Canada, right? But you can do loads inside US, of course, and between the two countries. And for me as a Canadian trucker, right, I was not allowed to do loads inside US. But as a broker, I can do whatever I want. That's why just now I moved my first load. I moved from Washington to Texas, and that's perfectly legal. Not sure if that, because I'm an agent or a broker, not a trucker, but also I think it's because the company I work for, they have offices both in US and Canada. And so we allowed, basically, I can work with customers anywhere. Like, let's say you're in California, you want to move a load to Texas, hey, give me a call. And Jeremy says it's a quiet time of year. That's for sure. It's probably going to be quiet, I don't know, at least 2-3 weeks in January, if not longer. And wait, we have a question here from Scott. Oh no, wait a second. So that's thank you, Scott. There was a different guy. I clicked on the wrong button. Okay. Been watching you since the beginning. I'd love to know what are your thoughts on LoadLink, and would you recommend getting started in tracking? Well, LoadLink is the Canadian load board. I use it myself, and I use it as a trucker, and I use it as an agent. You don't need it if you're American, but if you're Canadian, that load board gives you a lot of Canadian brokers. right? And actually, when I was a trucker, that's what I was looking for, because quite often I would, if you remember, if you watch my older videos, quite often I would sit on my butt for like 2 or even 3 weeks at a time trying to find a good load, because most of my contacts were American brokers. And so I felt the need to add some Canadian brokers in the mix. And there's not that many of them on truckstop.com, for example, or Get Loaded, or 123, what is it, load board? Like there's a bunch of these, DAT, right? DAT load board. But I mostly use truckstop.com when I was a trucker for US to Canada. And then I started using, in the very end, I started using LoadLink. And LoadLink compared to TruckStop, I would say it's an inferior load board, because you cannot put, like now as an agent, right? I look and they only give me like, I don't know, 100 characters where I'm supposed to put in the info about the load. Like it's very limited what I can say in there, and nobody reads comments. So people call me, like now I have this load from Manitoba to Quebec, and I put in the comments, I said pintle hitch or RGN with 32 feet in the well. So 2 guys called me this morning. I have a regular truck, so when can I hook this up? When I can pick it up? And I said, what kind of how do you connect to a trailer? Oh, regular truck, 5th wheel. Man. And I don't want to insult people, right? I don't ask them, like, did you not read the comment? But nobody reads comments. And so LoadLink, I don't know. And it's way overpriced. It's so expensive. I honestly got much better loads from truckstop.com. Even for a Canadian, I'd say for heavy haul, that's the best load board. They're not paying me for this, but honestly, that's what I used as a trucker. And now, of course, when I have a load inside US, that's where I post the load. I go to truckstop.com, or if it's Canadian, I go to LoadLink. All right, what else do we have here? Would you consider going back to being a company driver or trainer if the salary was proper? Well, I didn't want to bother with medicals, right? I still have, I think they told me, 3 months from the time when I got my Alberta driver's license. And all I had to do to keep my Ontario AZ or AZ Class 1 license was to take a medical. But I hate dealing with these doctors. And the second thing is that once you have Class 1, that's what it's called in Alberta, Class 1, just like in many US states, or in Ontario, it's AZ or AZ, right? But once you have that, you have to do medical every 2 years, okay? And I hate that. I don't plan, honestly, on driving a truck because I believe I feel more comfortable in the office environment. And I think I can make more money because I don't have as many expenses as I had before. And so now when I was when I was transferring my Ontario license to Alberta license, I just said, give me just a regular car license. And I think over here it's called either Class 4 or Class 5. So basically, it's as long as it's good enough for a Hellcat, it's good with me. All right, we have Caroline here from New York City, I believe. Well, it started like 6 months ago when I was always under the impression that no firearms were allowed in Canada, and I never saw any gun shop or any like gun store, right? And then there was an article in the media about Trudeau government planning to ban purchase and transfer of ownership for pistols, which meant that it was legal at the time. Now it's not legal because they did pass that bill, right? But it was funny that gave me kind of like a kick, like, wait a second. So turns out we can still buy something here, like, which was weird because I thought Canada was everything was banned, right? And so I started researching the subject, and turns out we have non-restricted firearms, which are perfectly fine, like shotguns and rifles. And then we have restricted, and handguns were restricted, but now they're banned. And so, well, you can still keep it if you have it, but you cannot sell it. You cannot transfer ownership. You cannot import anything. So handguns are basically, for a new guy, no handguns, but shotguns, rifles, and then I don't plan on hunting, right? But I think any guy would be interested in shooting. It's such a stress relief, in my opinion. I think it's cool. And I always wanted to try it. I just thought that in Canada, we're not allowed this. And then I realized that when they were talking about handguns, I realized that, wait a second, we actually can buy, a shotgun or a rifle. And so that's when I started getting into all these courses. And then it took like 6 months eventually, and I got my license. So now 590M is coming January 4th. It's already been shipped. And I bought 3 more magazines, I think. So first, it's coming with one 10-shot mag. I bought 2 more, 3. And then I bought one 15-shot mag. And now I bought 2 10 shots. So now, what is it? Like 30, 50, 65, I think. Yeah, so now I can preload everything at home. And then I'm driving to a range or something, or a private property where a guy gives me permission to shoot at some toilets or something, or pumpkins. And I can have 65 shots ready to go like this. So anyway, that was a good question. Did you get a skip shift eliminator? Did I get a skip shift eliminator module for your first challenge? It's an easy plugin that you can easily do yourself. Yeah, I did this. I did this on my 392 when I had a regular 6.4 Challenger, and I was doing a bunch of mods on it. If you go into my Dodge Charger / Challenger playlist, one of the videos was about this. And yeah, I did it myself. It was very tricky because all these modern cars are super low, right? So climbing underneath is like major challenge. But I found a spot. I remember I was cruising around for like a couple of hours looking where I can find a curb. I was cruising around in a shopping mall in Cambridge, Ontario, trying to see if there's any, where the curb goes down for like disabled people to enter a store, right? And I found some spot where like there was no people around and the curb was going down. And so I was able to drive like back on it and then add some pieces of wood. And this raised the car. At least I could climb a little bit under it because, I'm telling you, like I'm looking at the car outside my window here. It's like this tall, right? So a normal person, you cannot climb under a car. And so that's a major challenge with these simple plugins, is that ideally you need access to like a pit, or if you have a car hoist. All right, what else? I knew somebody would ask this question. Before I started this video, I talked to my boss. I said, what if people start asking me stuff like this? What do I say? And he says, percentage-wise, you can tell them percentage-wise. All right, so like I mentioned in the previous video, talking about low rates, right? I was saying that most of the time I want my rate to be as low as possible, right? And so you just add, I don't know, typical, I would say anywhere between 10 to 15%, right? And there's a lot of work that goes into this. Like quite often, people send me rate requests where the loads are not ready. I have to research dimensions. Because I know from my experience what kind of trailer is required, right? Because sometimes they will not know what kind of trailer is required. Like this guy with the Manitoba load, right? He says pintle hitch. Okay, I know a little bit about pintle hitches or pintle hooks, but you have to do a lot of research so that when you get a carrier, you can give them proper information, right? And one guy called me and he says, what would be the tongue load on the pintle hitch? So I had to get in touch with the customer. He had to get in touch with manufacturer. Finally, they said like 20. What did they say? I think they said 20,000 pounds or something. Because this guy was experienced with power only loads, and he said he used a weight, like some kind of a weight that he can move on the fifth wheel, depending on how much weight was on the tongue, right? So that to create traction. And so pretty much it's, I would say, normally it's kind of like, when you go into a restaurant, right? And you thank the server with a tip, right? That's pretty much the same with brokers, I think, because it does take a lot of work. Like, it's hard to believe this. Like, when I was a truck, I thought, man, like, what's the big deal, right? Just shuffle a couple of papers, get a load, but no, it's pretty complicated, I'm telling you. It took me a lot of video watching hours, to learn, like, even the software that you have to deal with, this TMS, transportation management software. It's a nightmare. Of course, you don't need it, like, if you're just an independent broker, but with the TMS, it's kind of like protects your butt, and then I like working under the umbrella of a large logistics company, so they have lawyers, they have accountants, if something happens, they always will help you out, right? I feel more protected than when I was an independent carrier, and and I was like open, to all the lawsuits or whatever. All right, I have a 50-foot RGN. 50 foot must be a stretch. 32 well. I think I'm doing well, leased to a company. I do recommend going with my own authority. Well, now, insurance rates keep crawling up, and that was one of the major reasons I left, because the expenses were just getting out of hand, fuel, all these payments on the equipment I had, and insurance. Like, I think I started with like 2,200 a month Canadian, then it was 25, and then last year I think it was like 2,800 Canadian for one truck, one trailer. And that IFTA was driving me nuts, And so I would say, if you're doing well, leased to a company, they say best is the enemy of the good. But if you're willing to try it, honestly, for me, when I went independent, my major reason was I really wanted to be independent, right? I knew that I wouldn't be necessarily making more money. Well, actually, I would have made more money if I stayed at that. Let's not internationally. My international was a bit too weak, weak frame, weak axles. But the Mac, I could have fixed the engine. I could have stayed with the Mac, even with its tiny 56-inch flat sleeper, and that 55-ton Fontaine. Maybe upgrade the front axle, because it was like 14,600 front axle. It was too weak for heavy haul, but I just decided to upgrade, and then, all these expenses came together. But yeah, if you want to try it, I think that's the best advantage, is that you are really independent. It's your name on the bill of lading. You're talking to people. I think it's more interesting. Like, for me, I was looking for more challenges. It just adds so many hats, to you're wearing, because now you're not just a guy that dispatcher says, okay, tomorrow 8 o'clock, be there. You're the carrier, you're the dispatcher, you're the manager, you talk to people. I don't know. For me, it was interesting. I just wish I would have kept my expenses lower and didn't trade up equipment, because, of course, each time I would trade up, like from a Mac to a Kenworth, my payments got much bigger, and then I traded up from 55-ton to 60, and then I got the Jeep, the booster. It's just too crazy. But if you want to keep it simple like that, I think that's a good trailer. 32 well. Actually, that's what I was looking for with this machine from Manitoba to Quebec, right? We needed either power only or 32 in the well, and not many people have that. But one thing I would suggest, like, if you do decide to do this, one idea would be try to avoid IFTA and high insurance and international plates. And the way to do that is just stick to Ontario. like stick to Ontario only. This way you only need Ontario plate. You don't need to do IFTA because it's one jurisdiction, one state, which IFTA is a major headache if you're independent. And then insurance is supposed to be cheaper if you only operate within one jurisdiction. So that would be my advice. I asked my brother. Actually, I was just talking to him via email this morning. I said I'm going to be at my mom's tomorrow on New Year's Eve, and he said no, just came from there. But he says you can call her on the WhatsApp because I wanted to do like a video call and ask him about my nephew, who's also Sergei, who's now at the front. And of course, I totally against it, but what do you do, right? So because it was a mandatory mobilization, right? So unless you escape or something, you have to do it, right? It's the law over there. And so they say that he's okay, that he's calling them occasionally on the phone. So far he's good. So I don't know, but it's a crazy situation where my family is pretty much split, politics wise, right? I support Ukraine. I grew up there, right? I lived in Ukraine from when we came from Hungary when my father was in the military, right? And he did 7 years in Hungary. Then he was stationed in Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union. And then I lived there from pretty much like 6 years old until I left in 92, I think. Yeah, when I was 30. So I learned the language. I was reading books, newspapers in Ukrainian. So, even though I didn't like it, I wanted to get out and get to Russia. But I just feel it's wrong just to go across the border and say, hey, now this is my country. It's just nuts. All right, what do we have here? Do you call equipment dealers and auctions? How do you go about finding loads to move other than load boards? Well, actually, I don't look for loads on load boards because they're just brokers, right? So, and it just, double brokering, triple brokering, that's not a good idea. So I just try to find, like mostly equipment dealers or maybe private people that buy and sell, equipment. And so when I started, how I found this first customer, well, actually the guy who asked me to give him a quote, I just went through my records. As a trucker, I showed you guys I have quite substantial amount of information on my computer from all my loads. I can go back to basically since I started as independent, I started keeping all the records. So I can go back and I can look at my invoices, I can look at my load confirmations, I can look at my permits, everything, right? And so I compiled the list on this website called MailChimp, right? MailChimp, a very good website for marketing. And it's the basic version is free. And I created a database of, equipment traders. And then I emailed them when I was ready to rock and roll. And I said, hey, I moved a couple of loads for you guys. So now I work as a freight agent with so-and-so logistics company. Would be happy to help you, would be happy to learn more about your situation and what kind of loads are you shipping or give you a quote, stuff like that, right? And one guy replied, but so far I gave him, I think he was asking me for like 2 quotes, but my rate was too high. So he found somebody. Yeah, that was 10 years ago. I think I made a video when I was really angry with brokers because I had no idea how the system worked, right? And then a couple of times they messed up, and my load confirmation, or actually the bill of lading, showed a freight charge, So I knew that what they're paying me, and then the customer forgot to take out the freight charge that he was paying to the broker. And of course, it was higher than what they were paying me. And so I got so upset about this. So I had that little tiny camera that I held in my hand, and I did that monologue about brokers, But yeah, like I said, one thing I learned is it's not as easy as many people think. All right, here's a question. Got a Freightliner DT12 with 2.47 rear gear ratio. How should I calculate a lower gear ratio without losing fuel efficiency? How should I calculate lower gear ratio? Well, 247, man, that's really crazy. Like, how fast are you driving? 90 miles an hour? It depends what you're hauling, right? But normally, what was that formula? Let me see if I try to remember. Yeah, you need to know your RPM of tires and your transmission ratio in the top gear, and then your rear ratio. And let's say, if you know all that, let's say your tires spin at 495 revs per mile, multiplied by, let's say, 0.73 is the top gear ratio of your transmission, and then you multiply by, let's say, 410, and that gives you 1481. You see that? So that's the RPM at 60 miles an hour. And so again, so it's very simple formula. So all you need is let's say 0.73, but some transmissions are different, multiplied by revs per mile of tires, multiplied by your axle ratio, and that gives you RPM at 60. And then you decide, is that high enough or is it low enough for particular speed? And then you can, let's say, oh, by the way, let's say it says 1481 at 60, right? And you want to know your RPM at 70. So all you got to do is just you take 481, divide by 60, and multiply by 70. And that tells you that with 410, what the heck? With 410, it'll be 1727. So 1727 RPM, which of course is too high. But that's how you determine the proper axle ratio. And I changed these axle ratios multiple times on international, and then even on a Mac I had to go from 391 to 410 because I was doing heavy haul, and Mac was a bit too weak with a 13-liter engine. But for heavy haul, I would say 391 or 410 is perfect. 410 would be great for like real heavy stuff. Let's say if you want to go over 100,000 pounds. Honestly, I'm looking at trucks, right away. I notice trucks. I'm driving when I had a car or this pickup truck. Of course, I always pay attention to trucks. I see them right away. Normally people would not maybe pay attention, but I look at the truck, I look at the trail, I see what he's hauling. But honestly, I don't feel like I want to park the car and just run after the guy and ask him to give me the steering wheel for a couple of miles. I don't know. A lot of this is because at first it was super interesting when I just started driving, because I just came from Russia to Canada, right? I've been to US once before that as a tourist, but because of trucking, it was super interesting because I was able to go anywhere, right? Everywhere, except far north. I never been to Alaska or these northern territories in Canada, but it was fun. Like first 3-4 years, I liked it. I would never see all these spots if I had not become a trucker. And Kaufman was a pretty good trail, and now of course prices are crazy. I think mine was like 53,000 US. Now I see they're selling the same trailer basic version for like 65 US, but that's still not as bad as Fontaine, which jumped in price by like 30-40%. The only problem with Captain was two problems. It was heavy, and second, it was too tall. It was 24 inches. But now they make for extra 1,000, I think you can get an option where it's a couple of inches lower. But it's still an okay trailer, right? I started with it. It's a good budget trailer to get started. So and they were giving me, I remember it was like 107 or 109 neck, which is pretty long, which was pretty good. But yeah, if you remember, if you watch those videos, the original trailer, they got some defective steel according to the factory, and there was a crack in the wheel area. But the customer service, like the way they treat customers, at least back then, it was like totally unbelievable, right? They asked me to bring the trailer back to them, and they built me a new trailer free of charge. Even though I was Canadian, like technically they could have said, hey, you bought it from US, so there's no warranty in Canada, right? But no, those guys are pretty good. You can talk to them. They're very nice. Happy New Year. Thank you, sir. Happy New Year. I'm just looking here at the comments here. All right, question about the accordion. Yeah, it's going slow, but I just recorded a new video. Just check out my Russian accordion channel. Now I'm mastering the famous Russian song called Katyusha. Katyusha, so it sounds pretty good on my accordion. So the accordion is still here. Everything is cool. I'm not gonna sell it ever. And in the summer, I plan a road trip in my Hellcat back to Ontario where my dealer is, because I want to change a couple of switches and maybe check the tuning. And that guy, the dealer, I found out he's also a representative for a MIDI system, like a company that makes a German company that makes MIDI systems. So I don't know. He never mentioned this, but I guess he could install a MIDI system. Like turn the accordion. You can either play it as an audio instrument or as a electronic instrument. Sorry, where you can hook up speakers, and it'll have automatic bass, like rhythm. I love that kind of stuff. And you can make your accordion sound as a violin, as a piano, as a flute, I don't know. It's crazy, but it's very that MIDI thing. It's very popular in Russia, but it's pretty expensive, and so I'm going to ask this guy. I'm going to drive my Hellcat we're going to do a road trip. Bring my accordion and maybe bring my shotgun in case I run into some gun clubs on the way. So I want to do it sometime in the spring, maybe April, May, when the weather improves. And hopefully my dealer is still in business, because he was, I think, in his late 60s, early 70s. I sent him an email asking him about this, if he can install this MIDI system, but he never replied. I don't know if he's still in business. Here we got a question about meats. Yeah, sure. Once I get my car, in the spring, we can do something like this. So instead of doing an online meet, I know there's a couple of people here that watch my channel, and unfortunately, yeah, with the channel, you see, I'm still in the transportation business, right? Except I changed sides. I switched to the dark side, so to speak. But the trucking videos, right? Since I'm not driving the truck, that's why I've been seeing a lot of negative, kind of like equity, in my subscriber base. Like every month I'm losing 100, 200 people. And I had to block a lot of people because a lot of people were leaving some pretty nasty comments. Like, I still don't understand. You don't like the channel. Why you like, there's millions of channels on YouTube, right? Like, watch something you enjoy. Why would you want to go to a channel that you hate and then start, wasting your life typing up nasty comments, And so I blocked these guys, and I think I have, like, I don't know, 200 people blocked there, like on the block list, so they can watch, but they cannot comment anymore. And Volvo 780 reefer, I'm guessing. Yeah, so he drives a reefer and he wants to get into heavy haul. Mike Willie. Well, I would strongly suggest you switch to a flatbed or step deck first, because you have to learn chaining and how to load stuff. I think that's a necessary first step, is to get into one of those, so that you can do open deck loads. And depending on your age, a step deck might be easier because it's so much lower, much easier to climb on, because flatbed is like this, right? I remember when I was doing flatbed with this McKinnon Transport that later went bankrupt, sometimes you lose count how many times you have to jump in and on and off the deck. So with flatbeds, it's a bit tricky, but flatbeds are pretty straightforward. Of course, the rates usually a bit better with step decks, especially when you have like a 53-foot step deck, with like 40, 42 on the lower deck. I like step decks. Step decks were fun, and especially when I had a 3-axle step deck. I even started doing some heavy stuff. I remember I moved some kind of underground, engine, like a small locomotive. They were shipping from a mine in BC, and it was going somewhere to like Texas or Wyoming, somewhere there, and it was paying pretty good, and I was able to load it because I had a 3-axle trailer. So I would say, like a 3-axle trailer, step deck with a couple of axles being airlift, like the front and the middle, and then long deck. And I would make it aluminum, for lightweight, but make the deck wooden deck, even though it's heavy. But I would never, now that after what I went through with RGN trailers, and of course they have timbers in the floor, right? They have wood floor. I would never go back to aluminum floor because it's so stressful when people load it and they can, put a hole in the floor. It's so easy to scratch and damage. It's just crazy. So especially if you plan on doing some rough stuff, some like rocks and, some scrap metal, sometimes you have to hold. I would say wooden floor, but aluminum trailer with 3 axles, aluminum wheels to keep it light, but definitely. And yeah, flatbed or step deck to make more money. Well, actually, there was in the past like 8 years, I think there were a couple of years where a former friend of mine, he bought a step deck, and then he was complaining all the time because I think he was with Landstar, and he said he would go on the load board and he was upset because quite often flatbed loads were paying higher than step deck loads. Like the same load, right? But he calls them and they say, and the broker would say, what kind of a trailer you have? Step deck. Oh no, we only need a flatbed. So sometimes, some shippers still have some kind of a negativity towards step deck trailers because they don't work, even though you think like the load. I remember there was one case, they were loading some coils of, like some pipe or wire or something, right? And the way it worked at that particular shipper, it was like kind of like almost like a subway station, with those high platforms. There's 2 platforms, and The trail was 8 feet 6 inches, right? So there's like this much on each side, maybe, I don't know, 3 inches. It takes forever, but you have to back in there. Now, those things are designed for a flatbed, because then the forklift picks up that coil and he can just drive his front axle right on the trailer because it's level with the deck, right? But when I showed up with a step deck, and the guy says, we cannot load it like this. And so I think they still loaded me, but we ended up going outside. And so they were not happy about that, but they had the ramp. So they had to pick up that coil, bring it down the ramp from the warehouse to me where I was outside, and then load it. And they were cussing and cursing because he cannot see anything. And they never did it like that before. And so, yeah, flatbed, I really enjoyed it. When I had like a 48-foot flatbed, it's so light, it's so easy to drive around. When I was studying with this McKinnon Transport, I was going through training, right? And so it's really fun. It's fun, but I think there was a couple of years where flatbed loads paid better. But I think generally step deck should pay better because especially when you haul like rocks, and metal or something like that. But if you haul some kind of equipment, if your step deck is low enough to load some kind of a machinery, right? And usually the rate would depend on the value of the load, right? So if you're hauling some kind of, I don't know, $300,000 generator, it should, on your step deck, and let's say it was, I don't know, 10 feet tall, it should pay better than a bunch of bricks that you load on a flatbed, right? So value of the load quite often determines how much they're willing to pay. You see, this is my Grail bottle. Love this stuff. Found it on Amazon when I was getting ready to go to Costa Rica. So it filters water. And first time I used it was in Yellowstone Park when I went right into Yellowstone Lake, and I got some water in here and it purifies it. So I had the taste of real Yellowstone Lake water thanks to this. Again, not sponsored in any way, just something I found on a list. There was a video, when I was researching Costa Rica, there was a video, what to bring with you to Costa Rica. And I watched a bunch of videos like that. And one of them said, make sure you get something like this. And this was expensive, but it's like the best portable, filtering kind of like thermos that, you can take with you into the wilderness. All right. Why do you call yourself captain? Because I don't think I deserve to be called a colonel. And many people don't know how to spell colonel. And many people don't know how to pronounce the word colonel when you spell it COLONEL. So I'm stuck with the captain. But basically it started with not like an army rank, but more like a joke in kind of like on an airplane, right? This is your captain speaking. And that's how it gets started. And we have a question. But I think I really like this feature. When you click on a comment and it shows up on your screen. All right, we've been live 53 minutes, 47 seconds, but we still have 126 people watching. I don't know what the limit is. I'm using the StreamYard. It's a free version, but we can go maybe a few minutes longer, as long as you guys give me some questions. Here's a good question. What was your favorite U.S. state to travel to while driving? Well, no doubt, during warm weather, I really enjoyed traveling to Montana. Montana is my favorite state because of the beautiful scenery, but I also like Texas. And in winter, I really like going to, the very south of U.S. where it's warm, because it was crazy. I remember it was my birthday, maybe some 10 years ago. And I remember calling my mom and I was driving through Texas, and she couldn't believe. I said, "Hey, it's it's January. It's my birthday." And I said, "I'm in Texas. Over here it's like plus 15 Celsius. Like what is it, like 60 F?" I think nothing beats that when you can escape cold weather in Canada and you can get a load going, let's say, to, I don't know, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana. I really like southern states. Southern states in winter, Montana, maybe Washington when it's warm. What was the scariest thing that happened to you, OTR? The scariest thing probably was when I had that load in Las Vegas, and then when I couldn't make the axles work as 2+2, I had to redo it as 3+1, and then it was really scary driving with that thing in Alberta. Yeah, that big piling rig, like these heavy weights, generally, like these heavy weights are dangerous, and you have to be very, very careful. And then, of course, this other one, that crane, the crane where I was, again, doing like 3+1, and actually they gave me this big main unit of the crane, and it was so heavy that it actually broke the booster connector, like that metal frame between the booster and the trailer. That was scary as heck, So yeah, so basically you gotta be very careful usually when they're heavy loads. But I never had some crazy stuff like when a wheel would fly off or something like that. But another scary thing once happened, right? I had a video about this. I was in northern Ontario, and it was like -15, -20 Celsius in the night. I mean, on the evening. And then I shut down my curtains in my international, and I didn't check the weather forecast. And I went to bed, started my heater, and then in the morning it felt a bit cold. So I opened the curtains, and the first thing I see is the bottle of water I left on the dash was completely frozen. And so it turns out the temperature dropped from like -20 to -40 C, or it's the same as -40 F, and everything got frozen. And I remember I had like very little money on my credit card. It's like, the story of a trucker's life. And I had to call some guys, and it took them like 4 hours to warm up my oil. Like the truck was dead. But thankfully there was a small gas station right next to me, so I was able to wait over there, because of course the truck was super cold. So basically, yeah, heavy weight and cold weather. Those are usually that create some very stressful situations. A friend had a couple of trucks, but now he's a broker, and he told me he's seen greater success on the brokerage side. Well, I think, it depends a lot on the personality. Can you sell, right? Because even trucking, when you're independent, it's all about selling, right? You have to negotiate with people. So it's pretty much the same I'm doing here. I'm negotiating with carriers, I'm negotiating with customers. So you need to have that, sales personality, But yeah, I think the potential is here with brokerage. Like, honestly, I'm not chasing the big bucks here. All I want to do is be able to, cover my Hellcat insurance, some trips to do some wildlife photography, do some target practice with my Mossberg when it arrives, and basically enjoy life. And so I don't need that much money, and my mortgage is pretty low. It's pretty much the rate I'm paying for this apartment it's about probably almost 50% cheaper than a rental is for a similar apartment in Ontario. Because over there it would be $2,000 easy Canadian. Over here it's $900, $1,000 for a mortgage. Of course, there's condo payments, there's electricity, but still, it's cheaper than a rental. And so I think I did a very, very good decision on this, finally getting my own place. And so, yeah, I don't need that much money, but so as a broker, I just enjoy this, enjoy sitting inside. You know, I have my kettlebells, I have my big screen TV. I can go outside. The door is right here. I can walk over to because I'm on the ground floor, I can just take 10 steps. I'm at my car when it's here. And I'm very happy with the city, with Alberta, because Alberta has lowest income taxes in Canada, and the sales tax is 5%, not 13%. So I think it's the best province in terms of for business people, for self-employed people. All right, here's another question. What's your opinion on double drops or machinery trailers, 6-axle versus 10-axle setup? 6-axle. I'm guessing you're talking about truck and trailer. So let's say 3-axle truck, 3-axle trailer, or 10-axle would be truck with a Jeep with a booster. Well, I'll be honest with you. Like, I've been thinking about this, and sometimes I was asking myself this question: why did I let go of that 55-ton drop side rail? It was, I was losing some loads, but so what? You can never do all the loads. But I would say, if you are on the spot market, right, the fancy word that brokers use, spot market, and you don't have consistent customers. Let's say you're independent, right? But you don't have consistent customers. You're always searching for loads. You talk to different brokers. You know, you go to load boards. I would say keep it simple. You know, like in Ontario, I would say anything like 8-axle, because they allow lift axles. Like a 4-axle truck, 4-axle trailer. That's all you need, right? Here in Canada, in Alberta, it's different because they don't allow lift axles, but I would say 7, 8 axles. Just stay away from Jeeps. Like here, Alberta, maybe get like a tri-drive truck, even though they're very heavy, but you do get, more weight per axle. So if I was here and I was trucking, I would probably get like a tri-drive truck and a 3-axle trailer, and maybe get a single axle booster that I can store on the top when it's not in use. But again, these boosters, man, there's so many headaches, so many headaches. All right, and we have $10 from Caroline. Thank you very much. All right, search a lot for axles weight map. Yeah, that was an old video, right? And actually, I found those maps that I posted for tandem and tridem. I think they were when I was a Landstar driver. Those maps were there for internal use by Landstar BCOs. But nowadays, I don't find them particularly helpful. So what you have to do is, let's say here, there's a very useful manual online that actually I use myself as a trucker, and now I'm still using it as a carrier. It's basically if you search for licensing and permit book, it's called DSV, D as in David, S as in Sam, V as in Victor, DSV, a road transport licensing and permit book. And what these guys did, it's a company, right? It's a trucking company, but they created a very nice manual with all the states and all the in US and all the provinces in Canada, where they tell you, typical weight per axle, legal dimensions, routine permit limits. That's what I always check in. Like, how much can I get, let's say, on a quad or Trident, because some states, let's say they give you, 60,000 pounds on the Trident on the trailer, and then they give you 65 on the quad. And of course, one axle is 3,000 pounds, so it makes no sense to go there with a quad. So you need a Jeep, right? So I was always checking that, routine permit limits for each state. And then also they have a section there called escorts. Very important. I was always checking, okay, how can I avoid using escorts? And let's say I'm looking at Colorado here, and it says length over 85 feet on some portions of 2 and 4 lane highways, 1 escort. Over 110 feet on 2-lane highways, 1 escort. So stuff like that. So then how you make it as efficient as possible. And so, yeah, check this out. So I saved it on my computer, DSV Road Transport Licensing and Permit Book, and it's not stealing. They have it openly on the internet, and you can either use it online, or you can basically download it, save it as a PDF, and that's what I did. Again, very useful. And then, of course, I have that secret website where I'm paying $50 for running permits. Meaning that I can estimate the cost of permits. But that's $50 US every month, right? So you don't necessarily need that unless you are doing like some really heavy stuff. I had that subscription when I was doing big loads like 9-10 axles, and then I canceled it when I sold the truck. But now I restarted the subscription again, because it's very useful for me as a broker, since customers quite often don't know the cost, right? So for me, one way for me to persuade them to pay a fair rate to the carrier is to show them that, let's say, this load will require, $20,000 in permits, for example, right? So don't ask me to find a carrier for $22,000, for example, right? Or if the permits cost $2,000, don't ask me to find a carrier for $3,000, where it goes, 500 miles. So this way I can go into that website, I can do a screenshot of those permits, and then I can send it to the customer, or, like, have you considered this? Did you plan for these expenses? Because that's the carrier side, but it has to be covered, right, by the rate. Okay, here's a unusual question. I think you get a couple of $100, honestly. I don't know. I'm not planning on retiring anytime soon. Like I mentioned before, I'm not a believer in retirement. Most people die within a year after they retire. Of course, it's I'm semi-joking, but like, I don't know, what's the point of retiring? I think for me, making money is kind of like keeping a score. That's why I like when somebody buys one of my photos. It just kind of like makes me feel, important, that, my hobby, I'm good at my hobby, my other hobby, photography, right? So I always want to make some money, not just because I need it maybe, but because it just, helps establish your level of professionalism, right? And so I will always be doing something where I can make some money, so whether it be YouTube, maybe just, I can see myself doing YouTube full time, and I would just, one guy did a video where he disclosed how much he makes, and I was just blown away. This guy has a channel about cars, and I'm serious. He has a channel about cars. He just does reviews. He owns a couple of big, like nice muscle cars himself. He talks to other people. He does interviews, and but he has like almost 1 million subscribers, I think, and his videos get, anywhere from 20,000 to 300,000 views. and he opens analytics on YouTube, and I couldn't believe it. I thought he was, pulling my leg on this, but it clearly shows, like the graph. Okay, this month I made $17,500. I'm like, what? This month I made $22,000. So some people, that's all they have to do. Like, why would you want to work if you can make 20,000 US a month? It's just mind, boggling. But so it can definitely be a career, if you can get enough subscribers and enough views. But you just have to find the audience, right? And that's why I've been losing subscribers recently, because I've been experimenting with different. Is it better like this, maybe, because it's getting dark outside? Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I've been experimenting with some topics, right? Because I cannot do tracking videos, so I've been doing some, pretty much anything I felt like doing. But I think in the future, you can expect this channel basically to have major topics. It's of course, I'll be doing occasionally some videos about logistics, trucking, transportation. Maybe I'll go interview some sales guy at the truck dealer. I can go and find the local Peterbilt or Kenworth, and stuff like that. I can do an interview, or I can interview some truckers for sure. So transportation stays a big part of this channel. But also, once I pick up my Hellcat, I'll be doing a lot of kind of like muscle car videos, because it's a new car for me. I never had a car with 717 horsepower. And I find it's always important to do videos about something that gets you excited, right? And I really get excited over that power. And so maybe I'll be doing some, some cosmetic mods, maybe adding some lights or some decals, stuff like that. Checking the exhaust sound, but I'm not going to do any major mods. But I'm definitely going to be doing some racing once the car is broke in. So I'm going to find some race courses. Maybe I'll do some burnouts, so expect a lot of that Hellcat to be seen on this channel. And then the other topic I'm thinking of, once I start doing, target practice with a shotgun, I want to do that. So, maybe just do some reviews at some, firearms, I'll be installing the red dot sight, to me, it's fun. It's fun. So basically cars, shotguns, and freight forwarding or transportation. I think those are major three. And of course, for my photography, sometimes I might do a video where, some wildlife photography, but that's just like a minor thing, because I find it's hard to find people that are interested in that, even though when people do watch it, I get good, comments. But that's why you can expect me. I never cheat with titles. At least I try not to. So if you're not interested in that topic, just that the title says, just don't watch it. Wait for something that you're interested in to show up. And also you can use the playlist feature, right? I have a bunch of playlists. If you click on a playlist on my channel, you can just subscribe to that playlist, and only when a new video shows up on that playlist, then you watch it, right? So let's say if you're interested in transportation, you sign up for that. It's called freight forwarding list, and then you're not gonna watch videos about Hellcat or Mossberg 590M, right? All right. What else do we have here? Do you happen to have any insights on working for an American company as a Canadian driver? Well, it's not. I worked only for one American company, right? Landstar. and I found it was challenging to find loads, but it was a big part of my education. And that's what pretty much pushed me towards heavy haul, because I could see the rates they were posting on their load board. And that's what got me interested in our original, like, wait a second, so how can I make $10, $15, $20,000 for a load? What is this, RGN? What the heck is that? And that's when I started researching, back when I had my Yellow International. And so Landstar was good, but they're really bad about safety. It just, you can lose your job like this if you just overstep one of the crazy rules. But basically, yeah, if you work for an American company, it's fine. If you're Canadian, just you still, they won't allow you to do loads inside US. And usually it's a struggle to find Canadian loads, loads that go from US to Canada, Canada to US, because most of them, American companies, I mean, they're focused on the American market, right? So sometimes that can be a challenge. But other than that, if you can find a reliable company that pays on time and doesn't cheat, I would say go for it. Well, we had a question again about this US axle weight map. Again, that if you rewind this video to where I was talking about that online manual, I think that's more useful, because it actually tells you permit weights in each state, not just a color, right? Because that map was just telling you, okay, tandem max is like 40,000 here, 44,000 pounds here. But if you download this manual that I talked about, it'll give you the same information, but it's also much more than that. It's not just, it'll tell you when you need escorts, and when you need police, for example, escorts. I think the manual, I just used that map maybe when I was just getting started, when I didn't know, any better. So I'll just use this manual. All right, and we have a couple of more questions here. Do you really need 20,000 pound front axle for heavy haul? Well, when I was speccing my truck, right, and the Kenworth and Mack, I got them custom specced. And on the Mack, I still was not too sure about heavy haul, because it was my first 4XL truck. And I wanted to get at least 16,000 pounds, but on Max it was not available. And then I remember talking to a couple of heavy haulers. They were watching my YouTube channel. And the advice I got from them, they said, if you get like a 4XL truck, it's always good to have a 20,000 pound axle, because it gives you that cushion, because you can be 18, 19,000 pounds over there, with a heavy load. But one downside to this is that if you have such a heavy front axle, you need the double frame, or at least sections of double frame, because this is based on conversation with other heavy haulers, because they said a regular frame would not be strong enough if you have such a heavy front axle, and of course that adds weight, So maybe you can find a frame that's strong enough just with a single frame. But I guess, when you're speccing the truck, the dealer, they have all the tools on their computer. They can tell you, let's say you say, hey, I want 20,000 pounds. Do I really need double frame? But all in all, I would say, I don't know, quite often I was over 18, honestly, on my 4XL Kenworth, because I would go and scale. And quite often I was 18.5, even 19,000 pounds. So if I had a weaker axle, it would be a violation, right? So I don't know. So the only problem with the 20,000 pound axle is that the tires, the tires, those huge super singles, they start wearing out funny, and they're very expensive. So one thing you could do is, just to save on cost, is maybe get a 20,000 pound axle, but tell the dealer put on 18,000 pound tires, like tires that are smaller, and they're only good for 18,000. So this way you can save a bit on money, and then maybe down the road, if you decide you do need to be able to load 20,000 pounds, then you can just change your tires, especially, let's say, after a couple of years when it's time to change them, and you can put 20,000 pound tires on it. Of course, you might need to change the rim, which is expensive, but it still would give you, an opportunity. Okay, we have a 549 Canadian super sticker. Thank you very much. Well, I don't know. I think even with a Jeep, because usually you have like a big engine, like a 15-liter engine. They're pretty heavy. But with a Jeep, if you're planning to use Jeeps like a lot of times, I would say, this very heavy front axle is not that important. But when I was getting that Kenworth, I was planning for basically 7 axles only, right? That's my research told me that's the sweet spot, 7 axles. You're just above the 35-ton double drop guys, but you're not too heavy, right? And so I wanted to have a strong 4-axle truck, and I got 3 axles, and then I bought a flip axle, and it became an 8-axle rig. And I would say, that's what I would stick to. If I was starting again, I would just stick to that and maybe get a lighter truck, because that Kenworth, with all these heavy axles and double frame, it was 4,000 pounds heavier than my Mac. I still remember all these numbers. So Mac, 4 axles, 14,000 front, 20,000 pusher fixed, 4 wheels, and 46,000 drives, but very short, 244 wheelbase, 56-inch flat roof top sleeper, which looked cool, but it was awful to live in. But that truck was 23,000 pounds, fully fueled, basically ready to go with oil, cool and stuff like that. Kenworth was 27, right? And then, of course, I went from 55 ton to 60, and my gross weight, Kenworth and trailer, went from 53 to 60. So I was not too happy about that, honestly. When I was getting the 60 ton, I thought, okay, I can live with, let's say, 2,000-3,000 pounds extra, but I never expected the trailer to be 7,000 pounds heavier. So that was like a kick in the guts, And maintain. Hope you have a prosperous new year. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Ken from Red Deer. Yeah, we met at McDonald's. Yeah, I remember. Happy holidays, Mr. Durang. One guy says there's no such thing as subscribe to a yellow YouTube playlist. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I thought you can, but I'm sorry if it's not possible. Cambridge misses you. Thank you for the info on the American company. Yeah, I don't want to pull your leg, right? I'm just, the only company I know, honestly, is Landstar. But then a couple of big ones. What is that? Admiral Merchant. I know they also hire Canadians, and there's a couple of others. But again, Landstar, one thing I liked about Landstar is that money was never a problem. I never had any issues with payments. I could always call them and I could borrow money. I remember when I was changing my flatbed, I decided to change my flatbed trailer from a 10-1 spread, which was fixed. For some reason, I wanted to change it to a 60-inch spread so I can go to Western Canada. And I went to a trailer shop and they say $5,000 Canadian. So basically like 3,500 US. And I didn't have the money, so I called Landstar. I said, guys, can you please lend me some money? And then, of course, you're going to take it from the next load, because I said, I'm pretty sure I can make some extra money, because now I'll be able to go to Western Canada with a 60-inch spread. And so they gave me $5,000, So it was a good company to work for. Just you have to be very, very careful in terms of safety, no stopping on the shoulder, all this good stuff, That's how I lost that job, right? Because I was doing a video where I put a camera on top of the truck, filming the rear, showing how the trailer was, turning when I was leaving the truck stop. And I forgot to cut that piece out where I show how I climb. I stop on the shoulder and I climb to the top, take the camera, and somebody forwarded that video to the management, and right away, okay, you're dismissed. We warned you during orientation that you cannot do this. There was like one major rule, right? Don't be a sitting duck. No stopping on ramps and side of the road unless you have a breakdown. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into all this stuff, because this is my first year as a resident here in Alberta, and I really like Calgary. I think I like it better than Edmonton. At least weather here is crazy, but quite often it's warmer. And mountains are 1 hour away, like my favorite Lake Louise and all these parks where you can go do some wildlife photography. But I think Stampede is definitely a big event here. Yeah, there's a lot of things here you can do with a camera. I think it's a great place to live, and everything is cheaper here than like fuel, diesel fuel, gas is cheaper than in Ontario. Food is about the same. Alcohol is more expensive, but now I don't drink a lot, trying to get into a better physical shape, lose some weight. But over here they have mostly, it's all liquor stores are private, whereas in Ontario it's mostly government owned. It's over there prices are lower, even though Ontario has 13% sales tax, whereas here it's 5%, but it's still cheaper in Ontario. Basically, if you want to be an alcoholic, Ontario is the province to get to. All right, are we gonna see a good smoky burnout with that new very high horse power car? Well, those tires, right? The car comes with the performance summer tires that cost $600 extra. Like, whereas all season tires are free, like they're already included by default. But these guys, whoever spec'd this car, they decided to go for performance summer tires, extra $600, because they were buying it in the summer of this year. And so I don't feel it would be a good idea to burn out those tires, because actually the tread, it's not very, very, very big. But maybe I can get some junk tires, I'm thinking. I definitely want to try it. I never did any burnouts before, but of course this car, it is what they call it, line lock, and all this good stuff, where you can lock your brakes on the front axle only, and you can push, the rear wheels to the max. But yeah, I could probably that would be a good idea for a video, right? If I can get some, maybe used tires, put some used tires on the back, maybe just get some steel rims, with used tires, put it on the back and just do the burnout so that I don't damage the actual expensive these summer tires. What is this? Here's a question. I own a new Tesla electric instant torque. I think I can beat the Dodge on the track. Yeah, that's the wrong thing. There was another question I was looking at, but I'm not a fan of electric vehicles. When you cannot hear any engine noise or any, like, to me, exhaust, it's the melody of the car. I cannot drive a car that doesn't have any exhaust sound. All right, this one, I wanted to show you this one. How would you spec a truck for pintle hitch towing? I have to spec a truck for my job. Well, first off, you need to know what you're gonna be hauling. Like, how heavy is the trailer, and how much weight is it gonna put on your tongue, right? That's what I'm not an expert in this at all. I never had the pintle hitch myself, but I did miss a couple of nice loads that I could have done if I had this. But basically, you need to match the capacity of the pintle hitch to the loads you're gonna be hauling. So I would say step number one in researching this is talk to your company about the weights and about the requirements, what kind of a pintle hitch they need. And then, of course, one thing I learned is that the tricky thing is the brakes. The brakes can be electric for the trailer, or they can be air brakes. And then, of course, air brakes, you need some extensions on your air cables, right? So I think you can also go to some shops that install this pintle hitch, and they'll be able to give you some recommendations. But I would say the first step is you need to know the weight and the tongue weight and stuff like that, and that would tell you what kind of a pintle hitch you need for that, right? So because you don't want to get something that rated for 20 tons and then your trailer with the load will be like, I don't know, 40 tons, right? Well, and that seems that we are caught up on the comments. And Paul says, I just paid $800 US for 2 tires, including alignment for my Mustang. Well, I'm not sure how expensive tires are here, but next winter I'm getting winter tires 100%. I'm just going to make sure that the car is secure. So I did a lot of research into how to make Hellcat safer and harder for thieves to steal. All these fob, RF signal blockers and stuff like that, and how to disable cloning of fobs for your car, and then some nice alarm system, some tracking system, stuff like that. At least I already found a nice company here in Calgary that installs what I'm looking for. Basically, it's a pin start system where you cannot start a car, or you cannot clone a key until you know the correct combination of buttons on the steering wheel, on the dash. You have to enter, let's say, but anyway, it's like a combination of buttons. So it's like millions of possibilities. And the guy was doing a demonstration how this works, and he says, yeah, you see this? Unless you know the correct code, even if you break the window, you get into the car, you hook up your diagnostic tablet, to a OBD port somehow, either under the glove box or near the driver's seat, you won't be able to clone the key unless you know this PIN code, right? And some expensive cars, I was trying to find something like what they have in Europe on some expensive cars, and like Audi, there's a panel. There's like an actual PIN code panel, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Like a PIN code specifically with numbers, but I couldn't find them over here. I found one in England, but they make this, install this panel on the dash, but they don't ship to Canada. And so this one I found is like the best alternative, where it's the same pin system, but it's just uses the existing buttons on your steering wheel and on your dash and in the center of your console. So I think it's very nice. It's very good. I'm gonna get some bear traps, some anti-personal mines. I'm gonna get real serious about protecting my Hellcat once it's here, once in the spring. All right, okay. How much were you making heavy hauling? Well, I would say anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 a month, Canadian, like no BS. And yeah, a couple of times you can make much more money in US with this, but because I'm Canadian, right, and so I cannot do loads inside US, so my income was way lower because I had a guy email me or call me, I think, once, because he was pulling a reefer in US, and he says, okay, can you really make like 30,000? He says, I'm making 30,000 now a month. What? With the reefer? Can you make 50? And I said, well, my average is like, I'm happy when I'm making 25, 30 grand Canadian, because my expenses were like 10 grand, truck, Jeep, trailer, booster, insurance, all that crazy stuff. But yeah, in the States, there's no limit. You can make a lot of money, especially when you find a couple of solid customers, right? But again, if you're on the spot market, I would keep it simple. And if you're only getting loads from load boards, just find something that works for you. Like, again, if I was going back, I would just probably get that Mac, but fix the engine, because it was constantly sucking air into the fuel system overnight, and people were saying, oh, that's 13-liter Volvo engine, they all have defective injectors. And but that truck was super light. That's what I like. 24,000 pounds, light truck. I would probably get it like 265 wheelbase, not too long, not too short. Put a steerable lift axle and make sure that the lift axle was the same rating as the drive axle, let's say 23, 23, 23, and just basically that's my recommendation. Keep it as simple as possible if you're getting started in terms of specs, and keep it as light as possible. Very important. And of course, the longer the deck, the better. Like nowadays, I would never get, if I was doing the same, like RGN trailer 26 feet in the well, I would get at least 27, 28, or just get maybe 24. And together with the trailer, I would buy the deck insert, and just put it in and leave it there. Like a 5-foot, right? So then you 24, or maybe get 26 and 5-foot deck insert, and you're 31. And I would just keep it like that. Make sure that I have like flip axles that I can flip hydraulically. Like a 4-axle trailer, 4-axle truck with a long deck and low loaded deck height. Have I ever been stranded, and for how long? Stranded? Well, I never got into really bad weather. I got lucky, I think, but a couple of times I was stranded because of customs paperwork. Customs paperwork was not ready. I show up at the border. It's like Saturday. Of course, a lot of brokers, they're not working, and then I have to wait till Monday, and they had to pay me detention because it was their screw up, not mine. So yeah, whenever I had detention, it was mostly due to brokers. A couple of times due to customers and shippers, when let's say they have a crane and the crane broke down. Do you feel like you're going to make more than a year as a broker? No, definitely. Like I'm staying. At first, I was thinking of doing it like an independent broker, but again, I like the protection of a large company, right? And I feel pretty independent. Nobody's calling me and saying, "Hey, why are you still sleeping at 9 a.m. in the morning?" I can do whatever I want because I'm self-employed. So just self-employed, and my friend who's the agent, I'm like a sub-agent. He's always willing to help with some advice. So I definitely see myself doing it maybe till I retire and start doing maybe YouTube full-time. I don't know. But yeah, definitely more than a year. Maybe, hopefully my plan is if I can sell this Hellcat, let's say, ideally if the prices on used Hellcats go up at the end of next year, maybe I can sell it and get like 20-30 grand, over what the original price was. Then I can get, and I'll be doing videos about the Hellcat, right? And then maybe I can get something with more power, like, I don't know, maybe like a Shelby GT500, or some other kind of muscle car, and keep doing videos about that. I'm really like, muscle cars are really my big hobby, together with now firearms and accordion and photography, right? So, and that's pretty much all my channel is all about. What is your opinion on hotshot trucking? Well, I think it took off in the past years, right? When people were trying to reduce their expenses, right? Because a hotshot carrier, so you're using a pickup truck, so your fuel mileage is usually way better than a semi truck. So over here in Alberta, I think they're pretty popular because there's all these oil fields, right? And sometimes you just need to ship a skid, some expensive piece, some machine broke down somewhere that they need a emergency delivery. And it's pretty much like expedited, like another way to be comfortable while trucking. Actually, I was thinking about this when I was buying the semi truck. I thought maybe I should just buy like a Class D in Ontario, like a 5-ton truck, and turn it into like expedited truck. Those guys are also pretty useful. But again, on load boards, especially maybe in US, it's good. But if I was doing like Canada to US, US to Canada, I don't think it's that many loads. It's more like mostly it's local, right? Like here in Alberta, I know hotshot trucks are popular. And anywhere where there's a lot of construction, like North Dakota, right? They have lots of oil fields over there, or maybe Texas. Again, gas lines, pipelines, right? I think it's good. It's way easier to drive, right? Because you drive a comfortable, small vehicle, pickup truck, right? And I saw many of them when I was trucking, and quite often they would have some kind of a sleeper in the back there. And so yeah, it was pretty cool. All right, I think, what is this, the 1 hour 44 minutes, and we still have 120 people watching. So thanks to everybody for participating in this. Probably we should end it somewhere here, because I think my software, because it's a free version, only allows me like 2 hours. and we are at 1 hour 44 minutes. So this will be probably the last video of this year, and hopefully I provided some answers to some of your questions. Thank you everybody for the participation. Thanks for the gifts and donations, and happy holidays. I hope the next year will be way better than this one. I know I'm looking forward to my new car and my shotgun, and and in the spring I'll be exploring all these areas over here, see what I can do with my camera, where I can go to do some target practice, and so really looking forward to 2023. So happy holidays everybody, happy new year. Thanks for watching. Ciao.